Well, welcome back to Rimshots with Sean. We just finished in the Eastlink studio, but you know what? The conversation was, we were having so much fun with it, I decided we're going to do a bonus, we'll call it a bonus track here for our YouTube channel, which you can go and subscribe, Barstools and Bandtalk. Go find it. We're growing like crazy, and we're really happy about it. So we got Bruce Jacobs, I got Peter Janes, and just before the break, we were just talking about the difference in learning how to play and learning songs and what have you. I'd be interested to get your feel on self-taught versus lessons. And Peter, I know you went to school. Bruce, you went to school. I didn't go to school per se, but I did study with a couple of guys here. I'll start with you, maybe Bruce. Your thoughts on self-taught versus taught by a teacher or an instructor.
Well, first of all, they're both appropriate and they're both valid. I didn't go
Can you hear me there, Bruce?
What's that? Can you hear me?
You just froze up for a second. Yeah, you just froze up for a second. That's fine. You're good.
It's good here. Okay, I was involved with the music department while I was in grade school and junior high school, and then I quit when I was in high school, and I haven't studied music formally since then. So I haven't gone to university or anything, and I would highly recommend it if you're a young person and you're interested in learning about harmony and learning more about music, that you do that. Peter mentioned that a great friend of ours had recommended to him to learn the melody. Well, when you learn a song, I think you should learn the melody, learn all the chords, learn the groove, then learn the bass part. If you're a bassist, so going to school, it's really whatever works best for your situation. I recommend going to school if you can afford it and you have the time, because you'll learn things that you just don't learn out on the street because you don't think to learn those things. It's all organized for you. There's a University of Manitoba program that is great here. It's turning out amazing young players, which unfortunately, you can go to does St. FX still have a program?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yep.
So St. FX program, Gilles Fournier, a bass player here, one of the best bass players in the country, really, went to St. FX, then came back to Manitoba, back to his home. But I know other people who are, self-taught. They're brilliant. You tend to be a little more limited stylistically. You're directed by your interest rather than by the scene. So when I was a kid, I got hired to play all kinds of music. Nowadays, you don't get hired to play freelance gigs. You get hired to play as a band.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Pete?
I mean, Jake summed it up so beautifully. But the one thing that I keep in mind is to get training. It helps you understand why you're playing those certain notes, not just playing the notes and just being okay with that's where they go, but understanding why gives you such a better connection to the song, in my opinion. Yeah. And you really get the structure, and when you feel the structure and don't understand what's going on, then you kind of become well more developed that way.
So when I started, I took lessons for about a year and a half from Al Raskin. He was a great teacher, amazing teacher. I got out of it, and then I decided, because all my heroes were quote learning jazz, I was going to do the same thing. So I went back to the conservatory. I had 3 teachers. One of them was Maurice Nadeau, who at the time was right into kind of Stuart Copeland and all kinds of accents, and that was pretty cool. And then you mentioned Scott Ferguson, and Scott was one of my teachers, and he did the X program, then went to Toronto, and somebody told him everything he learned at X was wrong, and he came back. And the funny joke, he and I talk about this a lot, or anytime I see him, it was 6 weeks of learning how to hold a drumstick. And I was like, finally, it's like, dude, I want to spin the cage like Tommy Lee. I know how to hold a drumstick, and that was the end of it. But Scott, he great guy, great teacher, great player. Well, you would have played with him, Bruce, right? So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Well, it depends on the quality of your instructor and your ability to relate to what the instructor's saying.
Right. Yeah. And, the thing with Al that I always found was good was he was smart enough to figure out his audience and, what do you want to learn? And he rope you in with some fun stuff, and then he put in some, some classics and whatnot. And, he's the reason why I probably think stick control is the Bible for drummers. our buddy Tom Roach would argue with that, because I remember I asked Tom when I interviewed him. He goes, "No, I don't like that book at all." But hey, I get it. Everybody's got their thing. But
Yeah, Tom's a Berkeley guy, though.
yeah, right. So I tell you another funny Tom story. So he comes up to do a benefit here in Dartmouth, and it was for the guy in the drummer. You would know him, Peter. I can't think of his name right now. Played with Miles, and anyway, he was going through a tough time. So Tom decided to play with their band, which was a Police tribute band. Mm-hmm. Tom figures the songs out, and he gets there, and they're about to play. Oh, by the way, we're doing them different. Well, different meant at a different tempo, and it was a slower tempo. So he gets up there and he's trying to play Roxanne at 40 beats slower than the song, and you can tell he was at the end when he came up to me. And he's just like, "I don't know what just happened there, man. I spent all this time on this, and they threw that at me." But I mean, he did it. He crushed it, right? He's Tom Roach. What more do you say about that? So anyway, couple funny little stories, but people that we know. So I said to you, Bruce, and way back before we started, I like the fact that you put vehicle driver on that CV, because a lot of people don't realize it's not all glamorous and glitz and glamour, right? There's some, the hour and a half on the stage is the fun part, but there's a lot of unfun stuff that happens. So your thoughts on that?
Well, it's just what you do. You grow up expecting one thing, and then you realize there's a lot more to it. When I was playing around Atlantic, Canada, I can't tell you how many times, driving to Sydney for a one-nighter, and there's a snowstorm coming, and you're just thinking, I wonder how the hell I'm going to get home before the snow hits. Start at 1 a.m, and you end up getting snowed in somewhere on the way, or, you just do whatever's necessary. So like driving the van for a couple of different bands that I was in, only because I preferred my driving to anyone else.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You're going through the rec house on Newfoundland, right? Or Kelly's Mountain, like you said, in the wintertime. I'd be interested, Bruce, to you don't have to name names, but something that you were looking at that you thought was going to be an amazing situation that you just kind of had to grin and bear it, if you will, a horror story of, a situation of maybe a gig or an artist that you work with. You don't have to name names, but just how you handle it, I guess, to kind of impart a bit of a lesson to kids watching.
Well, I don't know how many kids are going to be watching me, but they'll be watching you guys. So I think once you commit to doing something, then you commit to do it the best way that you can. And then you deal with whatever happens. If I get hired to do a gig and the people aren't happy with what I'm doing, or they're not happy with what they're doing, you guys both, I'm sure, have played with people who had more sour grapes going on than anything. And it's like, God, you have an opportunity to perform music. What more, if you've chosen to take the gig, just go and make the best music you can. Playing with somebody for example, I played in the Powder Blues Band for a year and a half. I made $100 a gig. I knew the band was making about $5,000 a show. So all the sidemen made $500. You try and break out of that pattern, and it's like, you can leave if you want.
Yeah.
Or you can stay. But no, you're not getting a raise. That kind of stuff, it's kind of galling. But at the same time, hey, man, I want to do this. I would get this experience. So, you're going to hang with it. And as it turns out, I have great, pride in that period of my time playing. I got to play with some fabulous people, and I love Tom Lavin. He's still playing with the Powder Blues these days, and I admire what he does with it. It was tough to take at that time, though.
Absolutely, I can relate for sure. Peter, I want to lob you one here, because you and I, both do this from time to time, and that's the art of the fill-in gig. And I laugh because in Halifax, I've had friends come out and go, "Man, you just jumped in with that band and it was effortless." And it's like, well, because we all pretty much do the same songs, maybe a little bit of a different way. So, I mean, if you can't jump into a situation like that and kind of ace it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. But you've had the opportunity to do different sorts of things. So not only the bar bands, but you filled in with, artists of higher quality and stuff. What's your, I guess, your viewpoint, or your how do you approach the fill-in?
Well, the bar stuff, what I did was I went around to all these bands when I was off and just listened to how they play these songs. You always talk about the running joke of the Halifax playbook, where we do the same songs from all the bands. But everyone done it differently back in the day. So like I would go into and see Clam Chowder, for example, and listen to how they played these songs. And then, so I would be ready if they needed to fill in. And the next week I'd go see Shaded, or I'd go see Boys Next Door. And they all had different ways of doing these songs. And that made me what I thought was much more valuable, because I knew how they were going to do things and stop and start. And so I just started getting calls because I knew their stuff. And I think it's a lot more to it than just putting on a record and learning songs around Halifax, especially. You really got to know how to play their way, or have good ears. One of the two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd be interested to ask both of your opinions on this, because I had it in a conversation today, and I guess a couple days ago, and it centers around how you kind of get into that that group of, we'll call it the Halifax wrecking crew, if you will, where who gets the calls for what. And somebody asked me how I get calls, and I mean, I'm a big networking guy, and I also know if I'm asked to do something and I'm not the guy for it, I'll have 3 or 4 guys that I think will do a better job. But Bruce, if you were to give somebody some advice on how to kind of get into a reel like that, what would you say to them?
Well, I haven't seen anything like that in 20 years, really, like where people are getting called to do gigs like that. Like I can lean back and look. And by the way, I mean, I love my history in Halifax. Some of the greatest people and musicians that I've run across in my life live there. But, I love what Peter said. Obviously, you can't always do that where you're doing do your homework, learn how to play different styles, really make the focus the music and not your own impression of yourself. Don't listen to yourself when you play. Listen to the band when you play. We already know. I know what I sound like. So you see some bass players standing there. They're focused on the neck of their bass, and they're not entertaining anybody. They're up there just trying to function. They could be having such a better time just by relaxing and interacting with, like, for instance, you go out and sit in with somebody. I love quoting somebody's line. The guitar player plays something, and I quote it back to him the next bar. Something like that. Just a little thing that says, "Hey, man, I hear what you're doing." That kind of thing. Making sure the bass player's job is to tie everybody together. So do it on all levels. But
love it.
That's
love it. Pete, your thoughts?
Well, Jake takes all the words. He's got a great description of everything. I was just thinking on the side there that I used to listen to Jake years ago, and one of the things he would do is, oh my gosh, I think I just lost my train of thought there. What were we just talking about?
We were basically talking about getting into the reel of pickup people, like how you get gigs when people are looking for subs and fill-ins.
Oh yeah, so it was like I seen Jake years ago, and one of the very first thing that stuck in my mind was what he wasn't playing, and I was like, it's like I was trying to figure out, because the names were Bruce Jacobs, Bruce Dixon, Jamie Gaddy, John Chason, just to name a few of these guys that were constantly in the circuit, constantly circling and getting these gigs. So with Jake, I was like, I really got to check these guys out when they first came. And I heard Bruce, and it was just what he wasn't playing was so amazing to me. So I think if you can you don't have to play all these notes and all this, which is how I played when I first, came to the city, as much as I could to impress people. And it's actually worse to do that. And I found it was the moments that Jake would pick, or the certain spots, the things that he would hold back on, is what it was all about for me, So,
you're very kind, Peter. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Well, and I do know, because I did it wasn't really a filling gig. I have this kind of recurring thing with Dion Macbeth, and the Friday night we played, and there was just some wonkiness going on with the monitors and stuff. So Saturday I left for the show, and in my mind I'm going, you know what, I'm gonna be solid. I'm not gonna worry about somebody coming up and telling me how great of a night I had or whatever. And at the end of the night, Dion came up to me and he said, "Thank you." And I'm like, "For what?" He goes, "Because you made the decision to listen." And it was probably the nicest compliment I got, because I felt I played pretty good that night, and I didn't really do a heck of a lot, but just the whole thing felt right. And I wound up getting 1 or 2 other gigs because somebody's like, "Oh man, that was great." And I didn't do a thing. But so sometimes, you got to be mature and not put 10 pounds of bologna in a 2-pound bag, right?
Well, you know what? Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, sorry, Jake. Like some gigs call for, the schmoozy, fancy stuff, and just to be silly. Like Big Fish, for example, with us back in the day, Dale would, they would all want the fancy, just kind of like exciting bass playing stuff that didn't
Yeah.
necessarily sound good to another bass player, but to entertainment wise, it was fun. But you can't always play that way, So you just gotta.
Yeah.
Some gigs call for it, some gigs don't. Go ahead, Bruce. Sorry.
Fair enough.
No, I was just saying, Sean, that was a great story that you told, first of all. But remember, we should be a slave to the feel and the integrity of the delivery of the song,
Yeah.
not to our egos, right?
Yeah.
That's a great point because everybody's done it. You see somebody in the crowd, be it a cute girl or, somebody that you want to impress, and off you go, right? And sometimes it sounds great, and sometimes it sounds like a set of drums going down a flight of stairs. But to lay back and just the thing that I remembered about that night is I didn't tell anybody I was going to do it. I just did it. To have it noticed was really nice because, I don't necessarily say that that's my sort of style, if you will. But I mean, it was good. I learned something that night. I learned I could do it.
Hey man, I've been watching your videos with Michelle. You play the shit out of those drums.
Well, and it's funny because a session that we did for one of her songs, the producer's like, I need you to go and play 30, what was it, 32 bars of straight time to the click track. And I'm like, okay. I figure I'd do fills to keep myself engaged. It's not because I like to do fills. I just zone out because I've got ADD, right? So I've learned to, I play the click track live now, and it's helpful. But thanks for that, man. I appreciate it because, I at my age, you can't mail it in. You got to work hard.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're gonna wrap here. It's but I guess we'll call it parting shot. So Peter, you said to me 2 weeks ago you got to get this man on the show. Did we cover everything that you think we should have covered? Is there anything that I didn't cover that you would have liked to ask or mention? Or
yeah, I mean, we all know Jake. Bass players around Halifax know Jake well, and knew he was the call guy. Have you ever had a gig where you felt you were going to be fired?
I got fired on a country gig. I moved to BC like in 2017.
Wow.
I got actually kind of headhunted before I even got there. They knew I was arriving through mutual friends, and we went in and we rehearsed a bit, and I gave an honest critique of what I thought was going on, which was the guitar player was not taking care of business, and I just said, you guys, blah blah blah. Next thing I knew, the singer came up and said, I have to fire you. I said, you have to fire me? It's like, yeah, those other two guys are not going to play with you. They don't like you. I went, man, I've been playing for like 45 years. This is the first time in my life I've been fired, and I got to say, like, I definitely learned something.
Well, now we can all say even Bruce Jacobs got fired, man.
That's
right? Well, I'll tell you two funny stories that relates to bass players. One, I interviewed Billy Sheen, and he moved to Nashville, and he did a session, and he went into the session. Oh yeah, and I said, well, how did it go? And he goes, I had this country producer that basically said, Billy, love your playing, but what are you doing, man? You don't make any money past the 5th fret. And he was just like, that was for me a learning experience. And what he learned was he doesn't necessarily want to play that genre of music because he's all over the place, right? The other one was playing with Leland Sklar, or not playing. I interviewed him, and he was just talking about all the different people that he worked for, and he said exactly what both of you guys said. No, like basically stay in your lane, know what you're there for. Do more if you're called on it, and if you're not, do what you're asked, and keep your mouth shut. And then his plumber called because he had to get a sink fixed. It was hilarious to watch, and we kept it rolling. He was a wonderful man. And my party shot is, I'm sorry we didn't do this sooner, Bruce, because it was long overdue.
I really appreciate the opportunity to appear with you. I have been aware of your show for a while, and I dug into it a little more since we initially spoke. I love what you're doing, and I love how you're promoting music out of Atlantic Canada like that. Peter,
well, I appreciate that.
Pete, it's been a great pleasure to be a friend of yours for decades now, and thank you very much for speaking to Sean about getting me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
We're going to have to stay in touch now. We're going to have to stay in touch. Gents, thanks for this bonus. I've never done a bonus episode when I'm doing Eastlink. It's usually 3/8 and you're out, man. So, gents, thanks a lot.
Rock on.
Peace.